Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Massive thanks to the authors, Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed for allowing me to adapt their awesome story. Follow the link in the description to check out more of their works. Today we will be listening to the 14th part of What If Deku Had Both One for All and All for One. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 28, Birthday Gifts. Chapter by ThatOneZed. Izuku was just so happy. Yeah, his ankle might be broken, but that was fine. He was too worn out to heal as it is, so he'd get that another day. After, he was sure, another stern talking from recovery girl. But right now he couldn't care less. He was happy as could be. His ankle was wrapped, he had some good pain medication in his system and was currently being given a piggyback ride by Kikin. Really, how could it get any better? Oi nerd, you're heavy, Kikin grumbled for what had to have been the 8th time. What the fuck are you eating? Katsuden, he said simply, squeezing his arms tighter around Kikin's neck. I'm so happy we're friends again. I missed you. Shouto's a good brawler but he doesn't hit as hard as you do. Kikin groaned. Ugh. Don't talk about that asshole right now. My head hurts too much to think about it. They'd at last reached the locker room, and Kikin kicked the door in. Can you at least fucking get showered by yourself? Course. Izuku. Shouto voice called out. Izuku looked up and smiled widely. Shouto and Shinsu were there. So they'd passed. Both of them were in various states of undress. Shouto's top was off. God, his ABS looked perfect. Izuku didn't get nearly enough time to appreciate his boyfriend's solid body, long and lithe with defined muscle and that slight curve where his hips jutted out. I take it you two made up? He asked, pulling Izuku out of his thoughts. He grinned and pushed himself off Kikin, gingerly landing on his good foot. He limped over to Shouto, holding his sneaker in one hand. Shao-chan. I passed. And Kikin and I are best friends again. He cried, throwing himself into his arms and pressing a quick kiss to his lips. Bun, that's wonderful. Shinsu and I passed as well, and honestly I owe it all to him. His heart swelled at the cute pet name. He looked over at Shinsu, who was working off his layers of thin armor. He shot Izuku finger guns in response. He looked back at Shouto. You two did good as a team? I'm glad. We're friends now too, Shinsu said, took a page out of your book. I decided we're friends, so he is my friend. No buts about it. Turns out we have a lot in common, and I kept picturing him as a cat. I physically cannot hate cats. Izuku gasped, hobbling from Shouto to Shinsu, throwing his arms around him. Shinsu-kun. I'm so fucking happy. He was crying again. And isn't he? He's such a little kitty cat, I'm gonna die about it. He's so cute. I'm so glad we're all friends. Hey, I'm still not friends with Bakugo. Definitely not all Bakugo sucks, Bun. I'm not friends with any of you chuckle fucks. Kikin. Izuku yelled, limping to his best friend and grabbing his arms. My birthday is Saturday. Kikin glared at him. I know when your fucking birthday is, Deku. He shook Kikin lightly. We're going bowling for my birthday. Come with. Bring the Baku squad. More the merrier. We can have a bowling competition. Izuku cried, his smile so huge on his face he was sure it would split open. I'll crush you at bowling. Not everyone passed. But even the failures were still able to go on the camping trip, which was so exciting to Izuku. Nevertheless, he'd passed. And Kikin was his friend. And Shouto and Shinsu were friends. And the whole class was going shopping together on Sunday. Well, most of the class. A few people couldn't make it. Ida, Kikin, and Shouto had all declined. Shouto was visiting his mother, which he understood. Ah well. At least he had Shouto today, on his birthday. He loved the bowling alley. It always made him feel like he was once again that little kid with his dad on Saturdays after a good training session. Izuku sat in one of the plastic chairs as he put on his bowling shoes. Shouto was right next to him, fixing his own. So, how does this work? Shouto asked. It seems pretty straightforward, but it's super easy to understand the rules. But bowling can be difficult. They have a bumpers option if you think you want it. Izuku asked. Dude, I'm totally putting bumpers up on mine. Kaminari said. He was at the little kiosk typing in names. They'd rented 2 lanes for all 10 of them. One for the Deku squad, and one for the Baku squad. No. Kaken yelled. This is a competition. No fucking bumpers. I'm crushing Deku without cheating, he snarled. Hey, why is that my name? Izuku glanced at the screen. Kaminari had finished typing in the names for the screen. They read in order: Kshin, Kiri, Pika, Min, and Hans. He chuckled softly. Zero groaned. Hans? Really? You couldn't think of a funnier name? Listen, just because Anna of Aradel doesn't want to marry you. Thanks. That's the dumbest joke you've ever made. Zero rolled his eyes. I can't believe my best friend is a bad mimmer. I am a grade A mimmer. Kaminari yelled, you take that back. Shinso snickered from where he stood at their kiosk. I think I finished out names too, he said. The screen above them lit up. Deku, Roki, Shin, Rika, and Mom. Izuku laughed as he read the final name on the list. Ida, who had just finished putting on his own bowling shoes he brought from home. Izuku noticed they looked new. Did he buy them just for this? Looked up. Mom. You know, Shinso said with a shrug, because you're the group mom. Shoto blinked. Groups have moms. Yeah buddy, Shinso said. Ida's your mom now. He nodded, accepting his fate. Please take care of me, Ida. Oi, Deku. Let's fucking start. Kaken yelled. He was standing and grabbing the ball he'd picked out. Losing team buys the food, he said. Izuku grinned and grabbed his own ball. He actually owned his own. It had been a gift for his last birthday. He'd gained so much muscle around that time from training that his dad had bought him a heavier ball. It wasn't All Might themed like most of his things, but black and covered in green lightning. His dad said it reminded him of One for All, and Izuku had to agree. He quite liked it. You're on, Kaken. Together, they held up their balls, and in one smooth motion they both ran and threw their bowling balls at once. They rolled at about the same speed before crashing into the pins, both of them earning a strike. The loud crash of all of their pins hitting the ground was drowned out by their friends as they screamed in awe. Dude! Kirishima yelled, standing. That was fucking awesome. How did you guys do that? Kaminari, who was still screaming, grabbed Ashido by the shoulders and shook her relentlessly. She laughed and managed to get out. I didn't know you were so good at this, guys. Kaken rolled his eyes, placing a hand on his hip. Deku's dad used to take us a lot, he said simply. In middle school, we practically lived here. Izuku smiled. The arcade is pretty fun too. We'd come after school all the time and play around, then get in a fight about heroes or something. He beamed. Your turn, Xiao-chan. Xiaoto stood up, and pulled a rubber band off his wrist. Funny. When did he get that? It was pink, so maybe Okako had given it to him? Izuku watched as he lazily pulled his hair up into a tiny ponytail, a few stray pieces falling around his face. What? Now that Izuku thought about it, Xiaoto's hair had grown out pretty long. When it was down it was almost brushing his shoulders. Something wrong, Izuku? He asked, walking to where he stood by the ball retrieving machine. He shook his head. And nothing. Your hair is getting pretty long. Just noticed is all. Yes. It is. I've been growing it out. I only realized how long it had gotten during the finals. Kept getting in my face, he said. He tilted his head. Why, I thought you liked it. Izuku nodded quickly. I do. It's great. Behind them, Kirishima took his first shot, managing to hit a few pins. How did you know? Xiaoto offered him a small smile. You told me at the USJ. Said I'd look pretty. You were pretty out of it though, so I don't blame you for not remembering. But I've been growing it out ever since then. He walked past Izuku and mimicked the movements he'd see him and Kaken make, and threw the ball right into the gutter. This is harder than it looks. Izuku giggled. Want me to show you? He asked. Xiaoto's ball came back after a few seconds. He picked it up before walking back to Xiaoto. Here, I'll walk you through it. Izuku handed him the ball and stood behind him, holding his wrist. He walked behind him, hand on his waist, and showed him how to pivot his body while using the other to help him with his toss and the flick of his wrist. This time, the ball didn't go into the gutter, but only hit about 3 pins. "Thank you, Bun," Shoto whispered, "I like having you this close behind me." Izuku pulled back with a massive flush. They walked back to the seats as Shinso picked up his own purple bowling ball. "Really? Right in front of my salad," he said. In the end, Kaken's team had won. It turned out that Zero was a natural, and Ida was somehow worse than Shoto. So, Izuku's team had to pay up. Which meant that Shoto stepped in, brandishing a credit card with the name Todoroki Enji on it. That was fine. Izuku would spend Endeavor's money with no problem. They got Akira's, which somehow ended up better than normal. Don't ask how, but as they sat around the 2 tables Akira-san had pushed together, his katsudon just tasted better somehow. Even the bites of cold soba Shoto let him have were delicious. But maybe that was just because Shoto kept feeding it to him. Plus, seeing Kaminari, Kirishima, Ashido, and Zero react to Akira-san's cooking was hilarious. All of them were eating quickly, crying loudly about how yummy it was, and it made Izuku laugh so hard. A few people had pulled out gifts, which was humiliating though very sweet. Izuku normally hated getting gifts, but they had been so thoughtful. Even Kaken gave him a gift. It was a rare All Might collector's clock that Izuku had been trying to hunt down for years. He had no idea how he got it, but Izuku had cried on him a lot for that. Ashido and Okako apparently went shopping together the day before and pitched in to buy him some very nice cologne. There were a few other things as well, mostly All Might things. He supposed he had Shoto to blame for that. Speaking of Shoto, his gift came last. He pulled it out of his bag. It was decently sized and had a plush feeling in Izuku's hands. He opened it on the table, an empty katsudon bowl pushed aside. Whatever it was soft to the touch and a dusty green color. Izuku unfolded it, and smiled widely. It was the coziest looking sweater he'd ever laid his eyes on. It was a soft olive green, with a rabbit on the front of it. It was perfect. "Do you like O?" Shoto began to ask, but Izuku had pulled it over his head. "It's July, Izuku. Don't care. You'll cool me off, right?" he asked. The sweater was too big. It hung off his body, and the sleeves gave him sweater paws. "Aw, Deku-kun, you're so cute." Okako cooed. She'd been given the go-ahead to go back to Deku, and she was more than happy to say the name over and over again. Izuku pushed up the sleeves to free his hands more. It was so soft and cute, and it made him feel adorable. "Shao-chan, I love it so much. I'm never taking it off," he cried, grabbing his right arm and pressing against him. This was one of the best days of his life. After dinner, just about everyone said their goodbyes. Shoto had been given the clear to spend the night. For whatever reason, Endeavor seemed to like that Shoto was hanging out with the Midoriyas. Dad had just rolled his eyes when asked about it, something about Endeavor never leaving him the hell alone or what have you. Izuku opened the door into the house. "We're back," he called. "In the kitchen." Dad called back, "Toshinori is here." They made their way into the kitchen, and sure enough, Dad and Yagi sat around with papers strewn about the table. Dad looked a bit stressed but smiled nonetheless at Izuku when he came into the room. "Hey kiddo," he said. His voice was hoarse. "How was bowling?" "We lost, are you okay?" he asked and walked up to the table. He picked up a paper. It was Hero Law. It sort of reminded him of his own study material. "Dad, what are you doing?" Dad blinked. "Oh. I guess I never told you. Everything got a little crazy there for a minute." Yagi smacked himself in the forehead. "Hisashi, you didn't tell Izuku." "Tell me what?" Izuku asked. The last time they had a conversation like this, he got the worst news of his entire life. His heart rate picked up and... "I'm taking an exam on Wednesday. To get my provisional hero license." Izuku's brain felt like it was breaking. He blinked. "What?" He practically jumped on his father, grabbing him by the shoulders. "Dad, what the hell? Why didn't you say anything? I could have been helping you. Do you want my notes? It's not all the material, obviously won't cover everything, but it could certainly help." He turned to Yagi. "And you? Why didn't you tell me, Yagi-san?" "Hey." Dad laughed, catching Izuku's attention. "Sorry Izu, I really did mean to tell you. I just forgot entirely. Plus you've been so worked up between Katsuki and your finals. It just never seemed like the right time." "It's okay. So, is it just a written exam? He asked. Both actually. All Might pulled a few strings for me, Dad grinned. But enough about this, he said, you said you lost at bowling. Izuku nodded. He and Shoto slipped into the empty kitchen table chairs. Yet, Kikin is just as good as I am, so it was a wash between us. I'm terrible at bowling, apparently, Shoto said. Izuku had to show me how. Izuku smiled. Well, you've never gone before. It's normal you wouldn't be good at it at first. Besides, you started getting the hang of it by the end. Ito was terrible, I blame our loss on him. Izuku laughed while taking Shoto's hand under the table. Dad chuckled while leaning on the table. Yet, Toshinori here is pretty terrible as well. I'm not terrible. I think I'm pretty okay at bowling. I managed to hit pins, Yagi said. He checked the time on the wall, trying to distract them from his terrible bowling. Izuku wasn't fooled, but he let Yagi get away with it. We should eat. There's still tofu in the fridge, right? Dad said. I didn't realize I was hungry until you said something. Shoto hummed in thought. So you went bowling a lot as a child, right? He asked. Izuku nodded. So, do you think this counts as healing my inner child? It could, Izuku said. Did it make you feel happy? The smile Shoto gave him warmed his heart. It was still small, but it was so soft and made the skin around his eyes crinkle. I'm always very happy when I'm with you. But, yet, being there today, and doing something that doesn't really have any importance with friends just because we wanted to was nice. So yes, Izuku. It made me extremely happy to spend your birthday with you. His heart skipped a beat. Izuku's entire face lit up, his eyes wide. Shoto was so cute. So sweet. How did he get so lucky? He loved this boy so. Wait. Love? Did he love Shoto? Sure, he liked him so very much, but love? That felt serious. He was 15, no, he was 16. To be 16 and in love felt like something out of a teen drama. No. This couldn't be love. Though if Izuku was honest with himself, he'd never felt anything like this with another person. Shoto was so wonderful. He made him feel warm and safe. But I'm glad, he smiled. Well, you and Yagi-san enjoy your dinner. Shoto and I are gonna watch a movie in my room. He stood, pulling Shoto towards the exit of the kitchen. Dad frowned. Keep that door cracked, he said sternly. Ugh, Dad. Izuku whined, relax, we're not gonna do anything. While you're awake. Keep it cracked, Izuku. Izuku rolled his eyes and took Shoto to his bedroom, closing the door out of spite. The room was already prepared for Shoto to sleep in, futon on the floor. However, Izuku ignored it, stepping over it to sit on his bed. He pulled his boyfriend to sit next to him. So, Izuku said, what do you want to watch? It's your birthday, Bun, Shoto said. You pick. You know I'll watch anything. What did he want to watch? He hummed. How do you feel about subtitles? Pan's Labyrinth is good. It's spooky and fantastical. It's all in Spanish though. Or we could watch another Disney movie if you want something lighter. Someone made a Frozen joke today, Kikin raved about the Best Jeanist documentary. Bakugo can rave. Izuku giggled, leaning closer to his boyfriend. Yet. He doesn't do it much, but he can nerd out just as hard as I do if you get him on a topic he's passionate about. It's honestly pretty cute when it happens. Shoto pouted, wrapping his arms around his waist and pulling Izuku closer. Don't call him cute, he grumbled. Oh? But he's nowhere near as cute as my tiger, he cooed, pressing into Shoto's chest. He smiled up at him before pressing a quick kiss to his lips. Ooh. Let's watch the second Star Wars movie. You liked A New Hope, didn't you? Sure. Izuku grabbed his laptop and set them up to cuddle and watch the movie. He loved Empire Strikes Back a lot. Plus it was fun to watch Shoto watch the movie. He seemed mostly indifferent until the end of the movie when Luke and Darth Vader were having their famous battle, and dropped one of the best lines in all of fiction, "No, I am your father." Shoto let out an audible gasp next to him. He's his dad. Yep. Plot twist, right? He asked. Izuku couldn't remember not knowing that fact, even before he watched the movies properly. So seeing Xiaodo react in such a way was honestly really cute and kind of special. How many people could honestly say they avoided that spoiler? It was like not knowing Snape killed Dumbledore. That's a pretty common trope, he said, having the dad be the big villain. How awful. That would be like if the leader of the League of Villains was your dad, Xiaodo said. Izuku tensed, but quickly laughed it off. Ha ha ha, yeah. But you know my dad. I know all three of your dads, Xiaodo said very seriously. Midoriya-san, Yagi-san and All Might. I only have one dad, Xiao-chan. Keep telling yourself that. Soon, it was time for bed. The movie had long since been finished, and both of them were washed up and in their pajamas. Yagi had left for the evening and Dad had retired to his own bedroom, leaving Xiaodo and Izuku to his. Izuku shut the bedroom door behind him, smiling sweetly at Xiaodo. Xiaodo had slept over a few times now since they began dating, but they never really dared to do more than kiss, with their hands occasionally going lower. Nothing too far, just some horny groping before separating themselves and calming down and going to sleep in their separate beds. But, today was Izuku's birthday. He didn't want to say he expected anything per se, and if Xiaodo wanted to just do what they always did, that was fine. More than fine. Izuku loved kissing his boyfriend. But, he wanted more. Izuku stepped away from the door, wearing the new sweater Xiaodo gave him. It was warm, but with nothing underneath it, he could handle it in his air-conditioned room. His All Might sweatpants clashed horribly with it, but he was cozy as could be. Xiaodo, as always, looked put together, even in sleep clothes. He sat on Izuku's bed wearing a simple black sleep shirt and a pair of designer sweatpants that had the name of the label written down one of the legs. So, Izuku said, holding his hands behind his back. What should we do? He asked, giving his eyelashes a flutter. Xiaodo hummed and gave his longer hair a ruffle. I had a thought, he said, flicking his eyes back to Izuku. Maybe we should try things. I mean, it's a special day. I want to do something. He licked his lips. Special for you? SP special? He asked, before taking another step closer to the bed. Like how? He cocked his head to the side. His heart rate picked up, and his lips suddenly felt very dry. Bunny, he said, his voice soft. See mirror. Xiaodo held out his hand. Izuku jumped into the bed, pressing against his boyfriend. Izuku. His face went red. I want to make you feel good. He found himself nodding before his mind could even catch up to the implication. Please, he said softly, how do you want to do it? I dunno, Xiaodo said honestly, I'm not exactly well versed in this area. All I know is I want to see you without clothes on and touch you. Can I do that? Please. He begged, his lips pressing to Izuku's jaw. Xiaodo. Izuku whispered, before pressing a quick kiss to his lips. Do whatever you want to me. Special scene is here for adults to go to AO3 to read, winky face, we should get you into your futon, Izuku whispered. Dad'll be pissed. In a minute. You feel good? Yeah, cuddling does feel really good right now, he mumbled, wrapping his arms around Xiaodo. Though we probably shouldn't sleep like this. Xiaodo mumbled, clearly already half asleep. He was so cute. So soft, so endearing. So lovable. Yet. Izuku loved him. Chapter 29, Creative Mode. Chapter by Roxi2Star. Hisashi woke up alone in his bed, just like he did every morning. He woke up on the right side. The left side was still done up, pillows untouched as if waiting for another person to get into the bed with him. He yawned, groggy as he sat there in his bed for God knows how long before finally leaving the room to go take a shower. Once clean, shaven, and dressed in house clothes, he went to the door with Izuku's nameplate on it and gave it a soft knock. No answer. Slowly, he opened the door. Izuku and Todoroki were curled up in Izuku's bed. The futon on the floor clearly never touched. The trash can next to bed had used tissues in it. He sighed. Teenagers. He closed the door. What should he do? What would Inko do? Inko would lose her mind. It was clear what they'd done. Hisashi had given them a lot of trust, letting them sleep in the same room. Probably too much. A good parent would wake them up and forbid them from sleepovers like this again. At least in the sense of having the two of them in Izuku's room. Hisashi knew that banning Todoroki from sleepovers would be hard on him, as there was little escape from his father. Not to mention the same Papa Bear instincts he had when he'd seen them making out in the movie theater. But he pushed that aside. On the other hand, and maybe this was the villain in him asking this, but what was the big deal? Sure, they were young. But they both had massive amounts of responsibilities on their shoulders. They were heroes in training who'd faced certain death twice. Maybe they were owed a little slack. Teenagers, as much as he hated to think about it, had sex. Don't get him wrong, he was going to talk to Izuku about this. The sex talk might be punishment enough. He could make it really embarrassing but enlightening. Talk about protection and consent. Besides, even if he banned sleepovers in Izuku's room, that would just mean it would happen in the living room or at the Todoroki house. If they wanted to have sex, they were going to have sex. Quite frankly, nothing Hisashi did would be able to stop them. It would just make it more dangerous for them. Instead, he could just discourage it by reminding Izuku he was as perceptive as him, if not more. And if he was going to have sex in his house, Hisashi was going to know about it. Gross. His nose wrinkled as he went about making his morning coffee. He supposed he should just be grateful they waited even 2 months before getting handsy. He could remember himself at their age. Sort of. He had most of his childhood memories. His teen years were when things began to get hazy. He remembers the first person he ever felt attracted to, a boy in his high school. They weren't in the same class, but he saw him after school. He couldn't remember his name, but he remembered the little smile he gave. He remembered following him home one day after school. "Hey, Shigariki-kun, right? I didn't know you lived in this neighborhood." "I don't," Hisashi replied. "I have a friend in the area though, but I noticed you walking by. Thought I'd say hello." "Well, hi. I should probably get going though. My sister doesn't have a house key, so I gotta try and beat her home from middle school. See you tomorrow, Shigariki-kun." He waved. Hisashi grabbed his hand. Shigariki-kun. That's where the memory ends. He's fairly certain he could parse together what might have happened. He had stolen a handful of quirks by then. The boy might have been quirkless, and he certainly was after the exchange. Hisashi can't remember what happened after the boy had said his name again, but he remembers coming home late and feeling satisfied. He also remembers the boy dropping out of school not long after. He shook his head. He can't blame himself for things that part of him did in the past. He didn't have the memory of whatever he did to the boy with the nice smile, and he'd never know for sure. He had to let go of that guilt. But, Hisashi couldn't bring himself to. That boy long dead by now must have suffered at his hands. He poured his coffee, fixing it the way he liked. He brought the mug up to his lips, taking a long sip and letting the warmth wash through him. Teenagers could be dangerous. He'd have to talk to Izuku about being safe. He would keep that precious boy safe from people like him. Not that Todoroki was anything like that part of himself. He was a good kid with a bright future. They were happy together and brought out the best in each other. A sharp knock at the door took him from his thoughts. He set the mug down on the counter and walked to the front door. He checked the peephole and nearly jumped out of his skin. Endeavor stood on his doorstep in his civilian clothes. Hisashi checked his phone. No texts or missed calls. It wasn't even 9 yet either. What was he doing here so early? He sighed. Well, time to find out. He opened the door slowly. "Good morning, Todoroki-san. How can I help you today?" Endeavor crossed his arms over his massive chest. He almost looked handsome when he wasn't on fire. Tall, imposing, and with a light dusting of facial hair. "I'm here to collect my son," he said simply. "He visits his mother on Sundays." "Yes," Hisashi said, "I'm aware. He's slept over on Saturdays enough that I know. He normally takes the train right from here." "Yes. He does," Endeavor said. "But I have the day off. I thought I would spend it by taking my son to see his mother. You know. Like a parent." Hisashi nods. "Yeah, that's what parents typically do yet. The boys are still sleeping. It's pretty early." "That's fine. May I come in?" "You know what, why not? Today seems like it's gonna be a shit day as it is, so let's just start it off bad." "You want coffee?" he asked. "I want coffee. It's a 2-cup kind of morning." He let Endeavor in, leading him to the kitchen. "You know Shoto isn't going to want to see you, right?" Endeavor took a seat at the table, which was still littered with papers from the night before. He casually picked one up. I know my son. He doesn't get a choice. He should be happy that I'm offering to drive him and save him time. I won't be joining him in the hospital. I know seeing me won't be good for REI. Glad to see you're not a complete idiot, Hisashi said, grabbing one of Izuku's All Might mugs and pouring Endeavor a cup. How do you take your coffee? Black is fine, he grunted. Are these for the boys? He asked, motioning to the papers. No. Those are mine, Hisashi said and placed the All Might mug in front of Endeavor, who eyed it for a long moment before accepting his fate and picking it up. Not that it's your business, but I'm taking an alternative provisional hero licensing exam this week. Endeavor took a long sip of the coffee. This is good coffee. He turned away from the papers. I get it from the grocery store around the corner, Hisashi said, it's cheap. I tend to go through a lot. Izuku and his classmates are a lot of work. That boy of yours has gall. Hisashi smirked, I sure hope so. I raised him to not take other people's bullshit. He's anxious, but when it comes down to it, he'll rip your throat out. I've had exactly one interaction with him. He told me, to my face, that I'll always be second rate. He raised an eyebrow at him. Yes, and what about it? Seems he gets that gall from you. So, should I go wake the boys so you can get out of my house? Hisashi asked, or was there another reason you've decided to darken my doorstep at 8:30 on a fucking Sunday? Endeavor took another sip of his coffee. I was wondering if you were free sometime this week. I was hoping we could have dinner, to discuss Shado's training that is. Hisashi almost dropped his mug. His eyes widened. No. No. Oh God. You know what, he deserved this. The universe has finally given him his karma in the form of Todoroki Enji, the walking disaster that is the number 2 hero. I don't think that's very appropriate. 1. I really don't think there's much we need to be discussing in terms of Shado's growth that we can't do in a professional setting. And 2. I am your son's counselor. Any kind of fraternization like that would be crossing a line. 3. You're married. 4. I find you intolerable. Technically, I'm separated. I'm going to get the kids, he said, putting down his coffee and leaving the kitchen. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to him. Aside from the death of his wife and brother. And that time he was so mortally wounded he split in half. And that time Izuku almost died. Both of them actually. But this certainly makes the top 10. He checked to make sure Endeavor hadn't followed him, before opening Izuku's bedroom door. He stepped inside, closing it behind him. Izuku and Todoroki were still sleeping, curled up together. Boys, he said, moving to the bed, and shaking Izuku awake. Get up. Izuku's eyes shot open. Waha oh God, he cried. Dad. His eyes moved to Todoroki who was just sitting up himself and yawning. This isn't I Dad, I'm so sorry, we didn't mean to. Todoroki's eyes widened, realizing the position they'd been caught in. Midoriya-san, this is my fault, I'm the... Boys, he said seriously, get up, get clothes on. Shadow, your father is here. That stopped them both in their tracks. He's here to pick you up and take you to the hospital to visit your mom, but he's saying he doesn't want to go in there with you. Shadow, would you like me to get rid of him? Todoroki thought for a long moment. No, he said finally. No, it's fine. I can handle him. He probably has some other training or something he wants from me. I don't think there's another reason he'd come here. Hisashi hesitated. Well... He stopped, shaking his head. No. He came here for me, but don't ask why. Trust me, he said seriously, believe me when I say you don't want to know, and you are better off living innocent lives where you don't know about the horrors I just experienced. He rubbed the back of his head. Just get dressed. His eyes landed on Todoroki's neck. Oh God. What? Izuku started before he noticed it too. Oh fuck. Language, Hisashi warned, but oh fuck is right. What? Todoroki asked, panic rising in his voice. Izuku sat up examining his neck. Shadow, you have a hickey. A big one. Jesus Christ Izu, were you making out or trying to bite his neck off? Actually don't answer that, I regret asking it, he said quickly. Fucking teenagers. At least it's at the base of his neck. Shadow, do you think your shirt will cover it? Izu, do you have something he can wear if it won't? I can find something, Izuku said, hopping up. I think I have a compression shirt or here. He said, tossing the long-sleeved black shirt to Todoroki. That should go up just enough. Just say you forgot a shirt and borrowed one. Hisashi sighed. Just, get dressed. Don't think this conversation is over though, Izuku. We are talking about, he gestured to them and to the trash can, full of tissues. All of this. Later. Okay. Hisashi left them, closing the door behind him with a long sigh. Fucking teenagers, he said before heading back into the kitchen. Sorry about that. They stayed up late last night. You know, birthday fun and all that. Endeavor was sifting through the papers, holding up a notebook Hisashi had been writing in. Your notes are impeccable, he said, very detailed. He snatched the notebook from his hand. I'm a very detail-oriented person, he said. Anyway. Shoto had a long couple of weeks between his finals, the stress, and having a lot of fun yesterday. He deserves a good long rest. His grades were passable, he said, 5th overall. Though I did wish him to be top of his class. Yet and I want you out of my home, but we can't all have what we want now, can we? God, where were those boys? This situation was giving him a headache. There isn't anything that could happen that could make this worse than it already was. The front door opened. Oh no. There was one person that could be. I am here. With donuts. Toshinori's voice came from the hall. Why did Hisashi have to jinx it? Is that All Might? Endeavor asked, rising from his seat. Yes, Hisashi said, before ducking his head out into the hall. Sure enough, Toshinori stood there, holding a box of donuts. He smiled brightly at Hisashi. Cute. Hi All Might. What a lovely surprise. Endeavor is here too. Crazy, right? He said, making a pointed expression at Toshinori. At once he inflated, his smile now very nervous and forced. An Endeavor, you say? Well, that is a crazy coincidence. He walked stiffly to the kitchen. Hello NG, he greeted. All Might. Why are you here? Endeavor growled. You let yourself in. That's an awfully close relationship you have to Midoriya here, he said, approaching them. Hisashi suddenly found himself sandwiched between two massive men. He felt very small. And maybe a little turned on. Or was that just the panic? Are you two in a romantic relationship? Is that why you? Yes. Toshinori said, wait. What? Izuku cried. He and Todoroki stood in the doorway. Both of them looked shocked. I knew it, Todoroki said smugly. He is your stepdad. Hisashi brought his hands over his face and sank down into a crouch, screaming into his own hands. He was too old for this. He stood up and pushed his hair back and out of his face. Okay. That's it. I'm going back to bed. All Might, give Izuku as many donuts as he wants. Endeavor, get out of my house, and don't ever come back. Shoto, you're always welcome in my house, but your father is banned. Thank you Midoriya-san. Please make him leave. I can't do this, Hisashi begged. You're dating All Might. Izuku yelled. Because I don't think we talked about this enough. Dad, let's go, Todoroki ordered. Now. Endeavor gave All Might a scolding look, then turned his gaze onto Hisashi. Goodbye Midoriya. I do hope you reconsider. I will not. Hisashi yelled. All Might, Endeavor regarded, then looked to Izuku. Boy. Cause I can't face Kikin if he learns he was second place, he said right back to Endeavor before continuing his rant. Right about you two. Do you know what kind of emotional scarring this will leave on me? Oh, and by Shoto. Text me if you need anything from the mall for the trip, I can pick it up for you. Todoroki nodded. Yet I will. Bye, Izuku. By Xiao-chan, I need a therapist after this, and not just one for the PTSD. This is the worst. Todoroki grabbed his father and the two left without another word. The door slammed behind them. Hisashi then rounded on Toshinori as he deflated. Why did you say that? I panicked. Toshinori argued. What could I do? Tell the truth and say you're just a good friend. Hisashi yelled, not tell him we're dating. That stopped Izuku in the middle of his ramble. You aren't? Thank God. Izu, Hisashi said, I'm going to be nice and let you off the hook. Well. After this. No, Izuku cried, not in front of All Might. Toshinori looked between them, confused. What is happening? Hisashi shook his head. Consider it your punishment for breaking my trust. Izuku and Shoto had sex last night, Izuku whined, putting his hands over his face and crouching to the ground much like Hisashi had been doing just a moment prior. I caught them sleeping in Izuku's bed this morning. Don't worry, Shoto will still be allowed to sleep over. I won't even make him sleep or you sleep in the living room. But remember Izuku. I see everything. If you have sex in my house I will know about it. And so will Toshinori. Do I have to know? Toshinori asked. I'd rather not know what my successor gets up to. If I have to be burdened with this knowledge, so must you. He turned back to Izuku, who was in a fetal position on the floor. Quit that. We're done talking about it now. Hopefully, we won't ever have to have this conversation again. Have fun at the mall today, kiddo. I'm going back to bed. And with that, he left the room. Izuku was having a bad day. His dad found him in bed with his boyfriend. Endeavor showed up at their house, and having the vague notion of his dad and Yagi being together stuck in his head. Shoto won't believe him when he insisted it was all a misunderstanding. At least the worst of the day was behind him. All that was left was to enjoy a shopping trip with his friends. He entered the mall, quickly spotting most of his class at the meet-up spot. He waved, running to join the group. Okako and Shinso were standing aside, waiting for him. Hey! He called and ran up to their side. Hey Deku-kun! Okako said, pulling him into a hug. Yo! Shinso flashed him the peace sign. We were all just figuring out who needed what. I really need some bug spray, Okako said. The class split up shortly, leaving 3/5s of the Deku squad to their own devices. So. Bug spray? I think there's a camping supply store in the mall. It's near what I need anyway. I wanna get some heavier ankle weights for my training. I actually do too, Shinso said. Aizawa says I need to get better stamina, so resistance training it is. Yai, he deadpanned. The three of them set off for their stores. So. Mito, sleepover with Xiao-chan on your birthday, how'd that go? Izuku glared. I told you not to make fun of that nickname. Shoto asked me to call him that and he never asks for anything. So that's off limits. Fine. But remember you asked for this humiliation. How was your sleepover with Tiger? Shinzo asked with a smirk. He groaned, putting his face into his hands. Awful. Well. Not last night. Last night was fine. Wonderful actually, he said dreamily. Shoto had been so perfect last night. Their kisses, his touch. Izuku wanted him again. Okako and Shinso both stopped in their tracks. Oh my god, Shinso said. Don't tell me. Did you two fuck? Izuku blushed darkly, but did not deny it. You had sex? Okako yelled. Izuku dove in and covered her mouth with his hand. Not so loud. He cried, his face flushed. No, I mean yes, but we didn't go all the way. I shouldn't be telling either of you about this. This is private between me and Shoto. Relax Mito, Shinso said seriously. Rika and I won't say a word. If you tell us everything that is. Details. Okako said into his hand. He pulled his hand away. We just, He covered his face again. He thought about the soft way Shoto had touched him. We had a very nice time. Just, you know. A lot of, touching. Look, it doesn't matter. Besides, this morning is the real story you'll care about. Endeavor showed up at our house. And my dad found us in bed together, he said, then glared at them for laughing. Traitors. It's fine. Endeavor is still none the wiser, Shoto is safe, and my dad decided to let me off the hook since this morning was so awful. Oh damn, Shinso said. They had arrived at the camping store there. Rika, go get your bug spray. Is that a cat-shaped sleeping bag? Shinso ran off into the store. Hey? Cat bag? Where? Okako ran right after him. Izuku smiled, putting his hands into his pockets as he watched them go. He'd just wait out here for them until they were done, then they could head over to the weight store and... Cold fingers wrapped around his neck like a vice grip. His body was pulled back into a firm one behind him. A cold and all too familiar voice whispered in his ear. "Pretend I'm an old friend or I'll press my pinky down," he said. "You'll disintegrate starting with your throat." Shigaraki Tamura. Izuku pulled his hands out of his pockets. If he could just steal his quirk. "Keep those hands in front of you. Move them and I'll kill you," he said, pushing him along. "You won't be stealing my quirk, Midoriya Izuku." So they did know about his quirk. Not good. Very, very not good. "What do you want?" he asked softly. Shigaraki hummed. "I just wanted to talk to you. Get some insight as to why you piss me off so much. At first, I thought it was because you had a cheat code." Did he mean all for one? Cheat code? He asked. They turned the corner. It was less crowded here. "Your quirk," he said simply, "but then I realized I know that quirk. You can steal quirks and give them away. That's just like all for one." Izuku's entire body clenched. "Which is crazy. That's a pretty one-of-a-kind quirk. So, how did you get it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Shigaraki had him sit on a bench, pressed into his side. "Yeah you do," he said, "I saw you. You took Eraserhead's quirk and used it to beat me at my game. So uncool. I hate losing." His grip tightened. "I told Sensei about it. Told him I wanted to kill you." Izuku flinched. He said I can't. Which is stupid. I might anyway. Your face is so gross. You smile like nothing's wrong. Disgusting. Ugh, I just wanna destroy the things I hate. I wanna destroy you and this fucking mall. He laughed. "Hey, Izuku." "What?" Izuku whispered back. "How many people do you think I could kill before a pro shows up? 20? 40? 100? I could start with that mom and her kids over there." He motioned to a mother pushing a stroller as a little girl held onto her dress. "Think I should kill the mom or the little girl first? Or the baby?" "Hands on your knees, Izuku," he reminded him. Izuku put his hands on his knees, his legs shaking. "You'd go to prison." "Yeah, but how funny would it be after I kill all these people?" "You won't be able to kill All Might if you do that. That's what you really want, right?" Shigaraki made a small noise of agreement. "That's true. Sensei would be pissed too. He wants to meet you, by the way." "My sensei?" "Wouldn't say why. Asshole." This was a good opportunity. Izuku swallowed his fear. "Who is this sensei guy?" "A really cool villain," Shigaraki said. "His quirk is like yours. He's strong. He lives his life in creative mode while the rest of us scrubs are in survival mode." He pulled Izuku closer to whisper into his ear. "But then again, you're in creative mode too. Aren't you?" Izuku stopped breathing. His grip was so tight it was choking him. His hands moved to stop him. "Hands on your knees," he ordered again. Izuku dropped them, already feeling lightheaded. If he didn't die from disintegration, he was going to die from being choked to death. "I hate your stupid face. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt you too badly." His grip loosened. "I want to kill you, but for some reason I also want to keep you locked up. I dunno, you're like a cute little brother I have to share my games with. It's like I'm drawn to you. You just pull me right in." He sighed. "So, Izuku, do you want to meet my sensei?" "Deku-kun." Okiko's voice called. "Where did you go?" "Shinsu-kun, I found him." She waved. Shinsu turned the same corner, holding their bags from the camping store. They both walked towards him. They only got within 20 or so feet before Okiko stopped, holding out an arm to prevent Shinsu from coming forward. "Deku-kun, who's your?" A long moment passed, before she spoke again, her voice hardened. "Let go of him right now." Shigaraki smirked. "That looks like it's my time to go." "Don't worry, Izuku. We'll see each other again. Don't follow or I will start killing." He stood, bringing Izuku up with him before letting go. "Bye-bye, Izuku." Izuku gasped for air, falling to his knees. "Midoriya!" Shinsu yelled. Izuku held up a hand, waiting until Shigaraki walked away and disappeared into the crowd. Once he was gone, his friends were on him, helping him back up. "Wait. Was that from when you guys were at the USJ?" "Yes," Izuku whispered, rubbing his sore throat. "We need to call the police." Hours later, Izuku was released back to his father. They left the police station after Izuku had given his statement to the detective in charge. He'd been mostly honest about what happened, doing his best to avoid the mention of his quirk. Luckily, the detective was Yagi's friend, so he didn't press about his quirk. He wasn't sure what the detective knew, but Yagi trusted him. He looked down at his feet as they drove the old beat-up truck home. Dad's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Dad," Izuku said softly, "Shigaraki knows about All for One." "My All for One?" "Yeah, we thought he might, remember?" His voice was calm, but Izuku knew his father was anything but. "He said his sensei wants to meet me." Dad froze. He pulled the truck over, finding a parking spot on the side of the road. He put the car in park and turned to Izuku. "Izu, I'm so..." He grabbed him into a hug. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Wetness hit Izuku's shoulder. Then his father began to sob. Sorry, I'm..." He shook his arms, tightening around him. "This is... fuck. He knows who you are." Izuku was crying too. "Dad. We're gonna be okay," he said softly. He felt dizzy. This whole experience, this whole day, has been too much. So fast. So dreamlike. He might not know I'm his son. "I'm sorry," Dad whispered again. "It'll be okay." "I'm so sorry, Izu," he sobbed again. "I can't lose you. I'm here." He grabbed his father's back and pulled him closer. "I promise I'm not going anywhere." Dad cried into him, and he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "I wouldn't be able to handle it if anything happened to you. I wouldn't be able to live with myself." Izuku pulled his father closer still, his hand tangling into his white hair. "I'm not dying on you," he swore. Tears streaked his cheeks. "I promised, didn't I?" They stayed there like that for a long time. Elsewhere, Hisashi looked down at the photograph on his desk. Tomura had gone to see him. An important step for his boy. Meeting the new user of One for All. A user that had a most troubling quirk. His helmet gave him sight, allowing him to see the image of the boy in his UA gym uniform at the sports festival. His head a mess of green curls on the top of his head cut tightly around the sides, wide green eyes, and a smattering of freckles on his round face. He was a normal-looking boy. Perhaps the word cute might apply. Hisashi held the small photo up. It wasn't the way he looked that bothered him. It wasn't even just the fact that the boy had a quirk similar to All for One. It wasn't even the fact that he was the 9th user. No, he knew this child. Ever since his battle with All Might 6 years ago, there have been holes in his memories. Places where things just stopped, half of conversations, deals he made. Even his dear brother was hard to recall. He couldn't even remember his name. The only reason he was so sure he had a brother to begin with was the single memory of holding a head of white hair in his hand as he stared down at it. All the while his mind was screaming little brother. His little brother had been the first user of One for All. This he was certain. Other than that, he couldn't remember. There was also the woman with long green hair. He couldn't recall her face or her name. Just the swish of green and the pain in his heart as he watched her walk away. Who was she? All these years later, and that question still burned in his mind. She was important. Why couldn't he remember? The memory gaps include the child in the photo. Midoriya Izuku. He only had one brief memory of a child just like him. A 4-year-old boy laying in a bed with all might sheets, sleeping peacefully. The child, in his memory, opened his wide glassy green eyes and Hisashi felt a fondness in his heart. He had reached down and given the boy's hair a ruffle. Then he left. No other memories came to mind. Now, here he was, all these years later, with a quirk like Hisashi and holding One for All. A grab bag of mysteries, a puzzle worth solving. Worth stealing. Perhaps, Hisashi said aloud to himself. You might be able to help me find the bits of myself that slunk away. Won't you, Midoriya Izuku? Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below and check out the video or playlist on the screen for more content from me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.